The Odyssey is asking us to become our own storytellers. What is your true North Star? What is waiting for you at home? What will pull you back to really your deep, true self?
Yeah.
Everybody is wandering. Everybody, at least in some portion of their life, is lost desperately for home. And then here's the key. When you're searching for home, what is the one thing that will draw you there? Love.
Home is actually an internal way of being. It's found within you.
In today's world, we have lost our home and we have to sink it again, because home is where you belong. Home is where you are finally yourself. This is one of the greatest metaphors in the history of literature. Until we say, this is what happened when I was growing up. This is what was happening in my country. When we begin to do that, we take fate, which is what's given to us, into our own hands, and we shape fate into destiny.
Hello and welcome. I'm Celine Chenoy, and this is the Dreamcatcher Podcast, a space for thoughtful, unhurried conversations about how we live and what truly matters. I am really glad you're here.
What can ancient myth teach us about navigating modern life? Stories have always been more than entertainment. At their best, myths serve as guides, helping us make sense of adversity, transformation, purpose, and the search for meaning. My guest today is Phil Cousineau, an acclaimed mythologist, storyteller, filmmaker, and author of more than 40 books, including The Art of Pilgrimage, and his latest release, The Wisdom of the Odyssey, 24 life lessons from Homer's epic. A longtime student of mythology and protégé of Joseph Campbell, Phil has spent decades exploring how ancient stories continue to illuminate the human experience. In this conversation, we discuss why the Odyssey remains relevant nearly 3,000 years after it was first told, what it teaches us about resilience, homecoming, and personal transformation, and how mythology can offer valuable guidance for life's journey. If you're fascinated by timeless wisdom and the stories that help us better understand ourselves, I think you'll really enjoy this conversation today. Phil, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm very happy to be talking about my favorite book since I was a boy.
Yes, and we are happy to have you here to talk about it. I mean, what a great book. I mean, as I was reading the book titled The Wisdom of the Odyssey, what resonated most with me was the idea that mythology isn't just about ancient stories. It's actually a living source of wisdom and meaning. And personally, I've always been fascinated with these timeless archetypes that continue to illuminate the human experience and help us navigate our own journey. So I'm excited to explore some of the deeper lessons and insights hidden within this enduring story that you write about.
Wonderful. I like to think about mythology as stories that never happened, but are always happening. So these are stories in between history and dream, right? So I also like to think of stories as a circle, and the top half of that circle is what I think of as the overstory. These are the facts. This is what happens literally from moment to moment, day to day, year to year. But that's not really what lasts. What lasts is what is in the understory. And that's where dream, emotion, mythology lives. That's why when you read a Jane Austen book, you read Shakespeare, you look at Grimm's fairy tales, and now Homer's Odyssey, they feel like they just happened, or they're happening right now to you. You recognize the different characters in your friends, in your family, and most importantly, in yourself. That's what's so powerful about the myth. The myth will give you different aspects of every bit of your life. One of my many mentors was Houston Smith, one of the great historians of comparative religion, which was an effort to try to find what is common between all people through all times. And at one point in one of the interviews I did with dear Houston, he said, I'm only interested in what was true in the past, what will be true in the future, and what is true now. Now, that's a beautiful thing to consider when you realize how captured we are by the trendiness of the world. What is hot now? What should I wear? What should I think? Versus something that is a very calming aspect in life, and that is what is always true to you, to your tribe, to the people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I mean, those timeless through lines that connect us all. I mean, that is really what we should be paying attention to. And of course, we should pay attention to what's going on in the zeitgeist. But of course, that the wisdom that's been extending for centuries can be super useful for us. Before we dive into the Odyssey, Phil, I mean, there's so much we uncover. I'd love to start with your own journey. You've spent decades studying mythology. You worked closely with the great Joseph Campbell, and you've also led mythology journeys through Greece. So, what first drew you to the Odyssey, and how has your relationship with the story evolved over the course of your life?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for phrasing it that way, Selena. I grew up on the knee of Homer. That's a wonderful old phrase which describes the fortunes some of us grow into if we have a grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, a parent, a teacher read to us from the classics when we're young. It could be Grimm's fairy tales again. For me, it was also Huckleberry Finn, great stories like that. The Arabian Nights tales. Brilliant. These are timeless, timeless stories. So the funny story, part of the folklore of my family, is that our old Philco television, about 6 feet tall, black and white, broke one day. And my father spent maybe 10 minutes trying to fix it, got all flustered and they asked me to help drag the television from the living room down to the stairs leading to the basement, kicked it down the stairs, turned around to me and triumphantly said, now we're going to read together as a family. And we did for the next several years. So I'm 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so we read Thursday and Friday night together out loud as a family.
Wow.
And if you do that, those stories will stick with you forever. They become part of your bloodstream, part of your active dreaming. So I'm inspired that way. And when I leave college, the University of Detroit, where I graduated with a degree in journalism, I began to travel the world. And I began to realize that every culture, from Ireland to France to the Middle East to Africa, everybody has their founding stories. This is the deep, deep identity of a people. And I want to know what is happening in the news, of course, everywhere I go. But if I want to find the soul of the people, the truth of the culture, I go to the folklore, the poetry, the dance, the theater, the mythology. I was doing this around the world for a few years, and I finally ended up in Greece, and I felt like I was going home again. This is one of the great axioms of culture. Tell me where you were born. This is part of the Odyssey. Who's your family? By what name do your parents call you? These wonderful old traditions. But then there's a second home. And your second home is your spiritual home. It's the place where your soul woke up. Now, I love the idea of even the name of your soul, your show, The Nomadic Soul. Well, nomads are different from travelers in that a nomad has no permanent home.
Yeah.
The nomad is constantly moving, as opposed to the rest of us who might grow up and stay in the same place forever, or those who are searching for what? Their spiritual home. Where can I go to become myself?
Hmm.
That was a big question when I was growing up as a young writer in Detroit and being French Canadian. The answer was obviously Paris. So me and millions of others go to Paris to become a writer, an actor, a dancer, and so on. But the subject there is archetypal. Where do you go in which people recognize your deep self?
Mm.
You may be wandering for a long time, but when you find your tribe, when you find your people, they're the ones who say, "You're a writer." For a long time, I was a young guy and I never paid for my espressos in Paris because a waiter would come up to me and say, "No, no, monsieur, no, monsieur. Uh, vous êtes un crieur. You're a writer. You will never pay for a coffee here." Oh my
Wow.
gosh. That is a way to think about home. And that
Amazing.
is what I began to resonate with, first in Paris and then in Greece,
Hmm.
and began leading tours in the footsteps of Homer, in the footsteps of Odysseus and Penelope. Why? Because it's everybody's story.
Yeah.
Everybody is wandering. Everybody, at least in some portion of their life, is lost and looking desperately for home. And then here's the key. And most commentators really do not address this. And I'm trying to resurrect this wonderful theme. When you're searching for home, what is the one thing that will draw you there? Love.
Mm.
Odysseus is tormented by 10 years of war. Now, think about the metaphor there. The war,
Yeah.
according to people like Will Durant, in 10,000 years of human history, we only have 50 years or so without a recorded war.
Yeah.
Take that in, because it means most people are either in war or they're recovering from war or
Hmm.
they're about to prepare for another war.
Right.
This is the story that is set up in the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Our hero has been at war for 10 years, but he cannot go straight home. None of us can. All of this is wonderful language, but it's also metaphorical. Why? If you or me or our neighbors, our friends, our family are wounded, like Odysseus is from war, you have to heal yourself before you find your real home.
Yeah.
That's the deep, deep beauty of the Odyssey. It's really, if you sail one way, it's 6 weeks to get from Troy, Western Turkey, to Ithaca,
Yeah.
Western Greece. But it's 10 years for our hero.
Yeah.
Why? Because it takes that long for any of us to heal from a deep wound. What
Mm.
finally heals us? The love of our family at home, the love of the land that will bring us home again.
Wow. That's so well put. I mean, I think all of us are seeking that home, and we keep thinking it's a place. And I struggle with that my whole life. Being somebody who's traveled a lot in my life since I was a kid. And because I grew up between so many cultures, it was hard for me to find a place where I felt rooted. And I definitely, now I'm 40, and I've come to the conclusion that, yeah, home is actually an internal way of being. It's found within you. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I resonated with everything that you speak about and everything that you really bring to fore in your teachings. But I just want to really dig into the whole idea of that longing to return home. I mean, home seems like, as I said, some people think it's a physical place. But in your view, what does finding our home really mean in the modern world where we are feeling disconnected and fragmented and pulled in different directions? How would you define that?
Again, beautifully put. Thank you so much. Of course, it's a lapidary question. There's so many layers to it.
Hmm.
That's why we've been reading and been fascinated by this story for 3,000 years. Roughly, that's about how old this story is. And so home for me, it has two aspects. One, it's roots. And that's a fascinating story now because the World Cup is beginning today. And if you have a favorite in the World Cup or the NBA championships last year, what are you doing? You're rooting for your home team. Think about the beautiful symmetry there. Your home team roots you. It gives you an identity that you are supporting Dubai or India or England or America, whatever it might be. Room gives you identity. Who am I in this faceless, aggressive world? Home then is where your roots are, but the roots can move, as we know. People are moving constantly all around the world, which is partly the beauty of the name of your show, The Nomadic Soul. And it's at the heart of the Odyssey, because this man has his roots, but he's lost his home. Think about the power of that image in today's world. We have lost our home, and we have to sink it again, because home, finally, the old joke is, home is the place you go where they can't turn you away. So, we recognize you. Come on home, Phil. Come on.
Or your passport,
Have a
your passport country. Yeah.
But deeply, on a more profound level, the metaphysical or the metaphorical or the mythical level, home is where you belong. Home is where you are finally yourself. So you can move and move and move from one country, from one culture to another, but feel rootless. Think about the beauty of those words. So in the Odyssey, what I try to unpack in 2 or 3 instances is one of the most popular but misunderstood and sentimental words in the language, nostalgia. It actually comes from the Odyssey. No story is the return. And the Odyssey is based on the thousands of stories of returning travelers, but also diplomats, philosophers, and mostly warriors from abroad. And when you get home to the docks, when you get home to the pier or the agora, the gathering place, what do you say? So what was it like over there? Tell me, what did they drink? What did they eat? The stories that happen when we return home are perennial. Every culture asks this. Is it safe to go there? Are women treated well when they go there? Would my religion be respected over there? So when Homer is writing this, it's a story that would have captivated everyone in a time before the internet, even before books.
Yeah.
They would say, so what was like life during the war or during the plague that was over there? Yeah. However, then the story has this other aspect to it, which is so contemporary. The second half of our favorite word here is algia. Like an analgesic, it's pain. Nostalgia is the pain of going home again.
Okay.
That's why when I've taken groups around Greece in the footsteps of Homer and even gone over to Ithaca, and I sit there on the wonderful patio of our hotel called the Mentor Hotel in modern, I begin in the morning with our morning coffee and say, so what is home to you? And what is home to you? What is it like to go back to home? And I get the widest ranges of responses, which is perfectly symmetrical with our geopolitical situation today. Home is bittersweet for most people. So
why is that?
Because it's painful to leave if we don't feel at home in the place where you're born. It's difficult to talk about. When I first began wandering around the world, and people would say, "Où habitez-vous?" Where do you live? Where do you come from? In French, right? And I wanted to say Detroit, but this was the 70s. It was the most violent place in the world. So I had very ambiguous feelings about my own home. So I would just say, I come from the States. I come from the Midwest. And then finally I thought of, I come from Detroit, where the Mustang comes from. And then I come from the place that gave us Motown. So you see, some pride begins to come back. And that's what everyone all over the world is in search of. That's why we wave flags. We sing our stories that tell other people where we are from and why we are proud. But it is always bittersweet. And this story, the Odyssey, replays that for people the world over. The book has never been out of print. It's in over 100 translations all around the world. Wow. It has been at the core of teaching programs. Why? That's what I tried to unpack in my book. There is wisdom there about love and war,
Mm.
about family, about home, about the dangers of going abroad. And
Yeah.
it's also about another thing, which I hope becomes out clearly in the book. It's about enchantment. The
Okay.
whole Trojan War begins with enchantment because remember, there's a beauty contest
Mm.
up in Mount Olympus. And Zeus is asked, who's the most beautiful woman in the world? And of course, he is not going to get into this argument with his wife looking at him.
Yeah.
So he sends Hermes down to the world and he finds this young shepherd boy named Paris to say, you decide. And then the three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, try to bribe him to say, I'm the most beautiful. And he chooses Aphrodite. And
Mm.
Aphrodite says, okay, you pick me, I'm going to give you the hand
Yeah.
of the most beautiful woman in the world. Now, how can any 17-year-old lonely boy resist that?
Yeah, of
But the
course.
moment he chooses Helen, the most, right, remember the face that launched 1,000 ships,
Mm-hmm.
war breaks out. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a very interesting storyline.
Yeah.
But what is important for all the rest of us is it begins the connection in the mind and in the soul, the nomadic soul, right?
Yeah.
That love and war are inextricably connected.
Connected.
And
Wow.
be very careful if you or me or our friends or our family, if we are enchanted into love. War breaks out. And the story of the Odyssey is the way to heal that enchantment.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole middle portion of the book is disenchantment. That's where all the monsters come in, the
Right.
sirens and and the cyclops and so on.
Yeah.
And for me, here's the beautiful symmetry then. We begin with enchantment, then most of us spend a good part of our life in disenchantment.
That's
Life
true.
isn't what I thought it would be.
That is true.
Love isn't what I thought it would be. Oh, everybody's at war all the time. But the point I think of the Odyssey, the point of my book, The Wisdom of the Odyssey, is can you stick it out? Can you
Mm.
stay true to your deep, deep spirit and say, I'm going to find a way to re enchant my life? I am going to find music that I love, a geographical place where I feel at home.
Yeah.
I'm going to eat the best food possible. I'm going
Yeah.
to develop my
Get the
spiritual
most
life
out of life. Yeah.
and re enchant my life.
Re-enchantment. Yeah. Yeah. I recently read a book titled Awe. I don't remember the name of the author, but yeah, he too highlights the importance of finding experiences that give us that sense of wonder and really trying to bake that in to our lives because, most of us, we tend to get jaded if we just, go through the motions and we just continually consume media that's not very wholesome, these days. So, yeah, I agree. Enchantment, awe, we need more of that in our lives.
That is the answer to victimization when we
Mm.
say, oh my God, my life would be so much richer. It would be so
Yeah,
much
you do
happier
talk about
if,
that victim consciousness and the importance of becoming aware of it. And
and choosing a life of awe and wonder.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Phil, I mean, what I found really fascinating about this story is that it's more than an adventure story. It's more than just, the hero's journey that we're all familiar with, but it's really a guide for navigating life's journeys. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on why people feel like it's so relevant, why this ancient tale is so relevant, even 3,000 years later after it was written.
Well, thank you for that. Well, first, of course, I understand your metaphor very well. I was the one who helped bring the whole phrase and idea of the hero's journey back. I wrote the film and the book about Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
So the hero's journey, I brought to Hollywood in the early 1980s. It's staggering for me to think about because
Mm,
but it's really the story of young people when
yeah.
you are trying to gauge who am I with my female powers or my male powers? And can I go through the tempests of life to
Mm,
find out who I am? It takes heroic acts when we're young. But in the second half of life, which is where we meet Odysseus and Penelope, both of them, you need another kind of wisdom.
Mm.
You need middle-age wisdom and then elder wisdom later on. And that is what is packed into the Odyssey, where you have to then go in and you have to check your grand and sometimes grandiose emotions to find out who we are and turn. And this, I think it's chapter 9 in my book that I call the warrior turned storyteller. So when we're young, the metaphor as athletes or celebrities, uh, people even working in the fields all around the world, peasants. There's something heroic about it. We have to be a warrior. We use all these martial metaphors. I'm going to battle. I am going to war today
Yeah.
in the marketplace. But then we find out we can't bull or bully our way through life. So the glorious moment for me in the Odyssey, and I really try to write about this delicately but tenderly in my book, is when Odysseus is finally released from captivity with Calypso, a beautiful 7 years with this gorgeous goddess. And she says, "Why am I not enough?" And he says, "Because you're not Penelope," which is one of the great romance lines of all time.
Yeah.
I'm going home. Real love is waiting for me.
Right.
And then he goes, helps him build a raft. He floats all the way to this magical island called Phaeacia. And he walks into the palace. And this is that moment of Xenia that you and I have been walking around. Xenia is the code of hospitality that I think helped build Greece, the entire Greek miracle. And what it meant was when you knock on a stranger's door, when you cross the threshold, they greet you as if you were a god or a goddess in disguise. That even
Where
comes into the Old
in
Testament.
Greece.
In Greece, but it
Yes.
comes into the Bible in the Old Testament as well. Be kind to everyone you meet. They could be a god in disguise. So Odysseus is greeted. They give him a storyteller, a beautiful, wonderful bard. Demodocus comes in, begins to tell a story about the Trojan War. Odysseus is in disguise, so they don't know who he is. So within his own lifetime, think about this in terms of our own lives, because we're in public life, right?
Yeah.
When suddenly you realize you're a legend. People are talking about you. They're writing about you. The photographs are there. And Odysseus begins to cry. It's astonishing for most people when they read the book how often he cries. What that tells me is Homer is trying to respect the feminine aspect of his life. It's 5 women who help him get home. It's not men. It's not his male ego. He cries to allow that emotion to come in.
Yeah.
And then he says, "I'm weeping because I am the man of whom you're singing." And now comes the point I think will help everybody in your audience. Until we become a storyteller of our own life, we are a victim. Other people will tell our story. It could be our parents. It could be our spouse. It could be the culture at large. The Odyssey is half a story of Odysseus seizing his destiny by saying, "This is what you've heard. This is what really happened." This is one of the greatest metaphors in the history of literature. What it's telling us is, until we say, "This is what happened when I was growing up. This is what was happening in my country, in my culture. Let me tell you the truth." When we begin to do that, we take fate, which is what's given to us, into our own hands, and we shape fate into destiny. The Odyssey is asking us to become our own storytellers.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. Isn't it important the kind of lens through which we view our life and how we interpret the events that happen in our life? Because if we view it from a place of fear or from a darker sense of being, it can come out as being very disempowering and not a story that really reflects on our strength and our resilience.
Beautiful, beautiful. That does happen with most people. There's even a negative side of mythologizing when you take a story that isn't quite true
Yeah.
and you pretend as if this is what happened to us. This is what happened to my people in my time. So the deep mythology, what my mentor Joseph Campbell said, the creative mythology is having the courage to go deeper
Mm.
and find the truth without any attempt to make ourselves glorious and glamorous. A very
Yeah.
dangerous word, by the way.
Yeah, because people can
Glamorous
be
is an old
delusional, right? People can be delusional when they
glamour is an old
interpret the.
Scottish word that means you're trying to hypnotize somebody else with your own beauty or your
Yeah,
own
yeah,
power.
right.
And the Odyssey is about breaking that down over and over again until you are like an immigrant on a raft drifting towards freedom. That is an image I think that has captivated people for 3,000 years. Odysseus on that raft, in danger of dying out at sea, trying to get home again. That's how we feel when we're flailing,
Yeah.
floundering, all those wonderful words.
Yes.
And I argue in my book, The Wisdom of the Odyssey, that there is a moment in which he, like all of us, are in such deep spiritual, psychological agony, we are considering, at least for a fleeting moment, of letting go,
Mm.
giving up,
Yeah.
surrendering. I think this is the first evidence in world literature of the thought of suicide,
Yeah.
of giving up. But he holds on. And I think people the world over, especially when this is told in an oral tradition with a lyre or some flute, some music in the background, we hope Christopher Nolan will be doing this as well. When he says, I am going to hold on, I am not going to let go. So here is, I hope this comes through, the power of my book, which I haven't read anywhere else. I think Odysseus holds on to that last sliver of the raft when he's floundering out in the tempest at sea. He holds on because of his love for his wife and his son and his country. He will not let go because he is also concerned for them. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah.
He's guessing that his wife is probably in trouble because he's been gone for 20 years and his son has grown up without a father. This is a metaphor for all of us. Can we hold on even when the seas are in turmoil all around us? Again, a metaphor for political problems, for ecological problems. Can we hold on? Can we hold on and keep sailing until we get home again?
It's almost like his family gave him a sense of purpose. It anchored him in sense of being and said, I'm willing to go through anything to return home to be with them. And I think we all need something like that, really.
Thank you for that. That's beautifully put. Another way to think about it, and it's always good in an interview if you are stimulated to say something you haven't said before. so, in this, I think what you're hinting at is true, and I circle around it in my book. He's going to hold on long enough to get home because he knows his love will make a difference when he
Mm.
returns home. And then, of course, my other favorite moment in the book, the one I actually begin my introduction with, and I just saw on Stephen Colbert's show, it's the moment in the Odyssey which inspired Christopher Nolan to make this movie at all. The dog.
The dog.
Book 17. When Odysseus has been away for 20 years now,
Mm.
and he returns home, Homer writes beautifully that Athena, his patron goddess, casts a fog over the land so he doesn't even recognize his own home. Think of the power of that. When many of us have been gone for a long, long, long time, we go home, nothing seems the same. Our
Yeah.
friends, our family seem different.
Yeah.
That's what Homer is saying. If you've been gone a while, it doesn't look like the same. And guess what? When they see you, you're not the same either.
Yeah.
That's the symbolism of the fog. So she puts him into a disguise because if Odysseus is recognized too soon, he will be killed by the suitors who have been trying to woo, that beautiful old word, trying to woo Penelope into marrying them.
Yeah.
So Odysseus is walking back to the palace, and what does he see in the staircase right in front of his home, his palace? His dog Argus has been waiting for him for 20 years. It has become one of the great emblems in history, in painting, sculpture, mosaics, you name it. The image, it's what they call a mythologem, a mythic image that shines brilliantly like a diamond, like a gem.
Mm-hmm.
His dog has been waiting for 20 years.
What does the
And
dog
then
represent?
devotion,
Mm.
faithfulness,
Okay.
steadfastness, but also animal instinct. That there are times when our human reason gets us in trouble, it makes us swirl away. And the emblem of dogs, which are in paintings throughout human history, mosaics, murals in ancient times, drawings, they often represent the deep instinct that maybe we're getting away from. Argus is pure instinct, and Homer writes it so tenderly that the dog lifts its head, sniffs, and recognizes his master because he was his hunting dog, despite the disguise. And
Mm.
again, think about the beauty of that, that your deep, deep friends, your truest friends, your deepest lover will recognize you despite the years, despite the disguises, the fancy clothes, whatever it might be when you go home. That's what Argus represents. So Christopher Nolan, the famous director, says,
Mm-hmm.
well, I decided to make the movie because I didn't have a dog when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I didn't have a dog when I raised my family. And then
Yeah.
I bought a dog and I reread my new dog reminded me of that moment when Argus greeted Odysseus on the way home. And I decided to make the movie. This is art as sheer instinct. Isn't that a beautiful thing? You've
It
got
really
all
is.
these violent emotions. And what Homer asks, and I ask again and again in my wisdom book, what is your true North Star?
Mm.
What is waiting for you at home? What will pull you back to really your deep, true self? This I find I agreed to do our interview because the title of your story, of your program, The Nomadic Soul, is at my own heart. We
Yeah.
are all wandering. We are all wandering, searching for the deep, deep, true home.
We are. Yeah,
So my question is,
and you do talk about the inner journey. And I mean,
yeah,
ultimately, this story isn't about monsters or distant lands. It is about going on that journey within ourselves and just having all those different experiences that change and shape us along the way. I think it teaches us so much about personal growth, healing, and becoming wiser. And I think that's why so many people can get so much from it.
yes. Oh, thank you. That's such a great lead because I'm asked this often, and even I began teaching myth in Hollywood in the early '80s to screenwriters at the American Film Institute. And this was before it became very popular. But I was working with Campbell, I was working with other filmmakers, and I began to see it was as if I had a kind of x ray vision where I would look at an old movie, Pandora's Box, Apocalypse Now, that was coming out, The Wizard of Oz. And if you
Mm.
know world folklore, you will see, as many have said, there are only two or three stories in human history, and they are repeated again and
They
again and
are.
again.
Mm.
So if you know folklore and you look at a movie or a modern play, you'll say, "Oh, here it
Or a
comes
Disney
again.
movie, a classic Disney movie.
Here it comes again and again and again."
Yeah, yeah,
And but why is that thrilling?
yeah.
Why is that exciting?
Mm.
Here's something I would really enjoy your audience to glean from this, because wisdom is the gleaning of something
Yeah.
important from our experience,
Mm.
something deep. And that is when you are looking, let's say at The Wizard of Oz, you're looking
Love
at,
was, I love that. I love that
yeah,
movie. I love the
one of
book.
the
Yeah, yeah.
timeless movie, right?
Yeah.
Casablanca,
Yeah. Okay.
these great
Casablanca
movies.
too.
What are we doing when we're looking at these movies, reading a great book, reading a great poem?
Mm.
We're not just mindlessly admiring something from the past.
Hmm.
No, we're seeing something of ourselves in these
Yeah,
stories.
we are.
At some point, we're all Dorothy, who, excuse me, who goes to sleep one night and she goes on a dream journey. She's on a heroine's journey into another realm. We all do this every night. Dorothy's journey is our journey. Captain Willard going downstream to find the monster in the middle of Apocalypse Now. Everybody is on a journey to deal with the monsters and to do what? Redeem love. Our stories should not end with monsters and murder. There is something beyond that, and that's the redemption of love. That's what the nomadic soul, I believe, is looking for. It's
Yeah.
not just glamour, history, notoriety. We're looking for love, which is, I'm not, and I do not mean simply romantic love.
Yeah, of course.
I
The
mean
spiritual love.
deep, deep spiritual connection with the
Yeah.
cosmos, with the world around us.
Yeah. And is it necessary for a hero or a heroine or whatever you want to call him to go on this a perilous journey to go through the dark night of the soul to face all those temptations, those obstacles to come to that realization?
Thank you. I remember lecturing once at UCLA on the hero journey material, but also the mythology that's so rich in our movies. And someone just said, I'm happy here in Los Angeles. Why
Yeah.
should I go anywhere? Why
We don't
can't
want
I
to get
just
out of our
be?
comfort zone,
Just let me be. Don't tell me I
Yeah.
always have to do things, which is a very, very fair question. So my response is this. If you are happy with who you are now and what you are doing now and the people around you, God bless you. Good for you. That's thrilling, but that's no story.
Yeah.
The story begins when we are in psychological trouble, when we are at a crossroads. The hero journey, the dream journey, the Odyssey, the pilgrimage. I write a great deal about pilgrimage.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
The pilgrimage, which is covered, by the way, in the Odyssey. Odysseus himself goes on pilgrimage for atonement, a very important element. These stories begin when the old answers don't work anymore. When your therapist can't help you, when your clergy, your imam, your priest, your minister, when they can't help you,
Yeah.
when no, even your best friend can't help, that is the moment when great stories begin. And you do not go clockwise on your journey. The brilliance of the hero journey metaphor or the Odyssey metaphor is right out of our dream life. It's counterclockwise. We have to go against time, against the grain. Think of all the metaphors we have in the language. We're going against the wind, as my singer from Detroit, Bob Seger, used to sing. We're going against the wind. And that's because we have to start over. We have to go deep into our spirit and our soul, not forward for more journeys, for more experience, for more furniture in our house. The true journey is letting go and saying, I don't have the answer anymore, but I have a hint. I have a suspicion that if I go to Ireland and spend a year writing, maybe I'll find my way. If I go to Paris to pursue my interest in fashion, there is a place out there where we can become ourselves, which is hiding at home. But that's still not enough. So the last stage of all of these wonderful journeys that change our lives forever, it's in every episode of the 1001 Arabian Nights tales. It's not enough just to go on the adventure. We have to bring home the boon, the beautiful old word from the myths, B-O-O-N.
Yeah.
And the boon is a gift. And the gift is wisdom. It's something that you learned about yourself or the world out there that the people around you at home, your home, desperately needs. That's why the hero throughout time, or the heroine, is celebrated. And you ask, what did you learn when you were out there?
Mm,
Okay, I know you slayed that monster, right? But what can you bring home that will make the world a better place?
sure.
That's why we leave home. One time, I spent a few minutes with Thich Nhat Hanh, the wonderful Buddhist
Oh,
monk
yeah. Wow.
from Vietnam,
Lucky
and
you.
he knew
I
that
would have
I had
loved to have met
written.
him. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful man! He
Yeah.
knew that I had written The Art of Pilgrimage, and he knew, and he
Mm,
honored that book, which is a glory for me.
wow.
Good grief!
Flattering. That's so
So I
flattering. Yeah.
asked him, for you in your tradition, which is a very good thing to do for travelers, to ask somebody else, in your view, in your tradition, what do you believe? It's a very
Mm,
respectful question.
it
Not
is.
just, this is what I believe and this is what you should believe. No,
That's
no.
ethnocentric. Totally.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Thich Nhat Hanh said the true value of pilgrimage is developing the capacity to return home and recognize it as sacred ground as well. Now, that's a beautiful, mature aspect. You have found something out there.
Mm,
It could be Switzerland. It could be Namibia in Africa. You have found something wonderful. You had a great adventure, but can you bring it home and see evidence of the sacred, the numinous, a word I love very much? Can you see the wisdom of where you live? And if not, you didn't really earn something when you were traveling. The Odyssey, for me, is the consummate story of this because it proves, in quotes, it proves that the Odyssey is the journey that changes everything. You aren't the same. And I
yeah.
bet you've had this experience when you've traveled. I have had, you come
Absolutely.
home and we feel different. We look different. We feel differently. What changed? But it's not enough for me to hold that. It's now required, and this is the power of the Odyssey, for us to tell our story at home. There's one tradition I love very much that I learned about in while researching my Art of Pilgrimage book, which I think is figuratively in the Odyssey as well, and that is those who go to Mecca or Medina on the Hajj, the great
Yep.
pilgrimage,
Hmm.
are often, I'm not sure if it's required, but it's suggested that when you come home, you hire a painter or a muralist to paint the story of your journey around your house. I've seen this in Northern Africa. I've seen it in the Middle East. I have to stop. It takes my breath away. So it's okay. It's wonderful that you made that journey. You completed the Hajj, one of the four pillars of Islam, right?
Hmm.
But now it's also your responsibility when people come up to your house and they knock on your door and say, tell me what happened. What did you learn? Did you have a moment of glory? What we used to say was what would happen when we were on a pilgrimage. This is what happened when Odysseus goes home. So here for me is the peak of my book. We know there's a terrible destruction of the suitors. Our hero has to restore his home.
Mm,
And then his wife, who's been waiting for him all these years, she still has to be very, very, very careful because there are a lot of imposters,
yeah.
people who say, I'm your husband, but I've been gone for so long, you don't recognize me. So she has to be careful. Very clever.
You make her seem like she is very wise and resourceful and not just a lady who's just waiting in, a damsel in distress. And I appreciate that because that's such an empowering reframe of who she is and what she's all about.
Homer describes her as wise Penelope over
Yeah.
and over again. She has to be every bit as shrewd and cunning and heroic as her famous husband. So when they finally meet, you know what? They are equals. This is astonishing. This is 2,000 years before its time. Homer is the world's first feminist. He has made Penelope as strong as Odysseus. So when they finally meet and they come together again after 20 years, this is translated in different ways. One of my favorite is, and when they shared their delight in love. What a
Mhm.
beautiful phrase to
Yeah.
describe people coming back. But that's not it. That's not the end. The peak then, for me, is when Penelope, who's been waiting and she's raised her son, their son, all alone, she turns to her husband and says, "Come tell me of thine ordeal. Tell me what has happened over the last 20 years." Now that's wonderful. Every man wants to hear that from his wife, his girlfriend, his lover, whoever that might be.
Yeah.
Tell me what's in your heart. Tell me what happened. But this is the surprise. All art has a great surprise.
Mm.
After Odysseus tells his story, guess what? He says, "Sweetheart, tell me what you have endured for the last 20 years. This is magical, because what it means is the story ends with a husband and a wife, a man and a woman sharing their stories. It's not just, now you tell me how heroic you are. Odysseus has been so humbled by his journey. He turns to her and says, "It looks like you've been in a world of hurt here. You've had to turn these 108, not two, there are 108 men who've been trying to seize her." And she begins now to tell her story. And you realize, good grief, this woman is clever. She's strong. The deeper message then is, are you doing that in your own life with the person you are supposedly in love with?
Yeah.
Are you asking them, how was your day? What was your trip like? And then are you listening?
Yeah. It's empathy, and that's what he displayed.
You know, that's the origin. I love this. I'm a word guy. I've written a few books on word origins. Our word absurd, one of the great words in English, comes from the Latin absurdus, which means not listening. The world, our relationships, our own lives are absurd if we're not listening. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Especially you're in radio, you're in podcasts.
Yeah.
You want people to listen to you. But
Absolutely. And it's something I've had to learn too. I mean, there are different levels of listening. As someone in this field, you got to attune to the deeper level of listening. So, yeah, and that's something that all of us should learn, because, oh my gosh, we'd be able to retain and learn so much more if we do that.
Wow, that helps me a lot, because it's a strange, odd, beautiful thing that 50%, half of the Odyssey is in dialogue. And it's in dialogue because one character will turn to the other and say, "Tell me what happened."
Yeah.
That mere lead can change your life.
Yeah.
Rather than us always describing, "Oh, my day was hard, my career is hard, my love life is hard," whatever it might be. The whole business, turning that energy around and turning to a good friend.
Yeah.
And just saying, "What's going on? Tell me what happened." Those words lead to treasure again and again in the Odyssey. Why? Because tell me leads to a story.
After spending years immersed in myths, stories, and the search for meaning, what do you hope readers take away from the wisdom of the Odyssey? And how do you hope that they would embody the lessons that you write about in your book?
God, beautiful. I love the way you phrase that. A few years ago, I was lecturing on myth again on a ship, and my co-presenter was Frank McCourt, the famous Irish novelist who wrote Angela's Ashes, which was then turned into a powerful movie. And he tells a story about how he taught in the New York schools for 38 years as a very charismatic Irish writer, Irish storyteller. And at the end, when he retired, the poor students in the Bronx brought their money together and they bought him a gold pen. And his favorite students came up on stage. They turned to him and said, "Mr. McCourt, now it's your turn." He had been teaching all of these other stories and poetry and Shakespeare and so on, but he was a brilliant storyteller, and yet he didn't think his stories were powerful enough. I would like that to happen to my readers, where you are reading one of the great stories of all time, but these are stories within stories within stories. And what I try to do with my life lessons at the end of all 24 chapters or 24 books is saying, this is what I think this chapter meant. But in every instance, I turn it back to you, the reader. And I'm asking, suggesting, exhorting all of you to say, now it's your turn. Now it's my turn. I have had a life. Let me listen to your story. Now let me tell you my story. That way we slowly bend away from these tremendous, I would call them seismic forces in every culture, not just America, not the Middle East, not just Europe. It happens everywhere to some degree in every culture, in which the culture is trying to tell your story for you. As a man or a woman, as an immigrant, as someone who was born there, the world has always tried to tell your story. One of the lessons of the Odyssey is that Odysseus finally finds his way home when he realizes he's in the middle of a story, within a story, within a story, which is Scheherazade in A Thousand and One Arabian Nights Tales, right? But it's also all of us. The moment when you say, I don't think that's what happened to your brother at Thanksgiving dinner when you're arguing about how you were raised in New York City. This happens all over. And we have to be kind about this. We have to be kind. It is one way to address your beautiful theme of the nomadic soul. I humbly suggest that we are all nomads without a permanent home until we sink roots somewhere by telling our story and our people's story. This is who I am. So it's a wonderful new Van Morrison song, one of my heroes, and someone I had breakfast with last year, in which he's writing about
Which
the dangers of
band
thinking.
is he from? Name sounds familiar.
Well, he's a great Irish mystic storyteller. He
Oh,
began with
okay.
them.
I'm
He sang
confusing him from
Gloria.
a singer from
He's
the
one of the great
80s.
bards, a
Yeah,
modern
yeah.
bard.
Okay.
And he's saying, because he's Irish, so he can say this with some experience. It can be dangerous to spend too much time in our past, which
Yes.
means, my past, my culture is defining me.
Yeah.
And it's also
Tradition.
dangerous to spend too much in the future,
Right.
which is, I think it's the California nightmare, the shadow. Everything is about the future. So the name of Van's new album is Remembering Now. Come back, bring your energy, your attention, your devotion, your soul back here. Sink some roots. And so the chorus in this wonderful song is, this is who I am. This is who I am. This is who I am. You see how percussive that is?
Yes.
In some way, when a poet, a novelist, a storyteller, a musician, and historian sits down and says, this is who I am. This is who we are. We are no longer victims. We are no longer victims. We are no longer constantly searching out there. Instead, we can come home again. We can come home again.
Wow. Phil, I'm totally I'm blown away by your passion, and I said this before we started recording. You're absolutely prolific, and that's definitely something that that's obvious, and that you really proved during our conversation. So, I mean, wow, what a rich and engaging discourse we had. I mean, it's such a pleasure exploring these timeless stories and themes with you. Thank you for bringing it to the fore to make us aware of all these treasures that, many of us may have forgotten. So I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And I love your show, your manner, your humility when you're asking questions, because I can tell, I can feel the nomadic soul in you and the
Thank you.
deep desire to go home again, or
Yes.
to say, I have sovereignty. I, as a woman, I can claim who I am and where I am. This is Penelope in the heart of the Odyssey.
Yeah.
And there is a Penelope, there is an Odysseus in all of us. To close, this is one of the great lessons of all human literature, I think of all art, that if you find the painter, the composer, the poet that you deeply identify with, you are no longer alone.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's finding that connection with someone or something that gives that sense of identity.
And keep searching. I remember asking again, Joe Campbell once, what if that story doesn't work for you? Because not all women can find an entry point into the King Arthur story, but not all men can
Yep.
find an entry point or identify with Jane Austen and so on. You can go back and forth with this. And I
Yeah.
remember him saying, I was young in those days, and I remember Campbell being so kind as the mentor talking to this naif who was out there searching for himself. And he just said, Phil, just keep on reading. Keep on reading until you find the story in which you say, how did that person know who I was and what I was feeling 1,000 years ago? How is this humanly possible?
Yeah.
Well, it is. If you pay attention to the eternal themes, love, war, a feeling of being in exile, a desire to go home.
Mm.
This is all in the Odyssey.
It's all in the Odyssey. Yeah. My dear listeners and viewers, I mean, please do go and check out Phil's book, The Wisdom of the Odyssey, and explore his extensive body of work. I mean, you can learn about his books, his films, his teachings, and his upcoming projects at his website, philcousineau.net. And the link will be in the show notes.